think we will start. We have crossed the 100 mark. The entire, it has gone up to nearly 5 pages, and we will be also live streaming this. And so with your very kind permission, I would like to start the program today. A very
Absolutely. Just one point.
Sure.
Just one point. There's some technical issue over here. It says your network bandwidth is low, whatever that means.
Okay. So I think, sir, it may be a problem at your end, or I just hope that, yeah, means I just hope that we don't.
I hope so too.
Yes.
Right.
अमित, हम लोग शुरू कर रहे हैं ये।
ओके
सर का बैंडविड्थ का कुछ वहां दिखा रहा है, कह रहे हैं, तो आप जरा नजर रखिए।
वहाँ पे इंटरनेट का थोड़ा वो अनस्टेबल।
जी 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 जी, ठीक ठीक, हम शुरू करते हैं। I would like to welcome His Excellency, Honorable Governor of. Yes, there is a proposal here that sir can turn off video if there is a bandwidth issue. So sir will keep his video on because we would also like to see him. But if there is an issue, then he can switch off at a later point if there is an issue. But it is always a pleasure not only to hear him but to see him as well. I have a very personal observation also with which I want to begin, that exactly 20 years ago, it was around this time or a month later that I met His Excellency for the first time in Shillong itself, in a political conference that he had come to attend. So our first meeting was in Shillong, and it has come a full circle. He is now the head of the state in that very state where we met him first. So I want to welcome His Excellency Professor Tathagata Roy, Governor of Meghalaya, a senior statesman, and more importantly for us today, one of the foremost biographers of Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee. Indeed, he perhaps has the first right on such a day to speak on Dr. Mukherjee, because had it not been for his biography, which all of you see here behind me, kept throughout whenever in my study, in my office, which keeps inspiring, had it not been for him, the entire saga of Dr. Mukherjee's life, his struggle, his ultimate, and would never have been recorded authentically, precisely, to a point. It is because in 2012 he wrote that authentic biography, having not only gone through a mass of document and writings, but having personally interviewed Dr. Mukherjee's elder daughter, having personally interviewed personalities like Balraj Madhok, having personally interacted with legendary icons like Sri L.K. Advani, who wrote a foreword to his book. Had it not been for him, we would have had a very piecemeal, a very suppressed, a very marginalized account of Dr. Mukherjee's life. And therefore, it is even more poignant that when, for the first time, after the abrogation of Article 370, for the first time when it is one India from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, for the first time when the tricolor alone flutters on the Secretariat in Srinagar, for the first time when it is one constitution, one nation, one people, we are celebrating, we are observing the 67th martyrdom day of Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee. And there can be no one better than Professor Tathagata Roy to not only speak about him, but in his characteristic manner, in the way he has written the book, also to keep watering the fountain of commitment, the fountains of aspiration, the fountain of patriotism that is within us all through his words. I would like to welcome all of you who have come here today, gathered from across the country And this is a huge gathering. And if we add people who are joining us live, it becomes a massive gathering. So in a sense, it is a virtual rally. The physical rally is not possible as of now, but it is a virtual rally, and it only shows. And I see so many people, so many seniors, I see scholars, I see authors, I see activists, I see academics. This is not something that reflects on us, but it reflects on how Dr. Mukherjee, 67 years after his death, in spite of all the attempts made to erase his legacy, continues to inspire generations. And when Prime Minister Modi speaks of a new Jammu and Kashmir, when he speaks about the abrogation of 370, which will only bring a new dawn, which will bring greater integration, which will bring greater justice to the people, which will make the Constitution of India applicable across the country. When he speaks of this, it is one of the finest tribute that he gives to Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee. I shall not stand any longer between you and our most distinguished and inspiring speaker and leader. And I must say again on a personal note that it was Professor Tathagata Roy during his long stint in West Bengal who inspired many like us, many like me personally, to come out into public life, to understand nuances, to recontextualize ideological dimensions, and to keep alive the flame of patriotism in us. Whatever little we have learned, whatever little our commitment is a lot that we have absorbed from him. Now I would like to just conclude and request our honorable speaker to come in here. And I have seen over the years, his appeal has not been lost. This is actually, I see the screen in front of me, I see people joining in, and I still realize that His Excellency to us, Tathagata in the earlier days, has not lost his appeal. And that appeal comes from the conviction that he has always exuded whenever it has come to nationalism and to our ideology. Friends, I would also like to make a last point here that today, Sri J.P. Nadda ji, the national president of the Bharatiya Janata Party, in the evening, will be reissuing Uma Prasad Mookerjee's book on Syama Prasad Mookerjee's death. Syama Prasad Mookerjee, his death in detention, a case for inquiry. That book is being reissued. A plethora of information is available in that book. And I would urge all of you to read Professor Roy's biography of Syama Prasad Mookerjee. If you have not yet read it, along with that, to read Uma Prasad Mookerjee's book on his death in detention. I think it's going to fascinate you, it's going to move you, and it's going to make all the fundamental truth about this momentous life very clear. When 18 September 1953, when Lok Sabha gathered to discuss the death of Syama Prasad Mookerjee, N.C. Chatterjee, one of his foremost colleagues in the Hindu Mahasabha days, father of later Speaker of the Lok Sabha, Somnath Chatterjee, was one of the finest speakers on that day. And he said, what adds poignancy to the tragic death of Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee is that one of the greatest sons of India was robbed of his freedom, not by a government run by alien usurpers, but by a government which was manned by the children of the soil. The greatest tragedy was that he was kept as a prisoner behind the prison bars without any trial, and he was treated like an ordinary criminal in spite of his serious illness, because he loved his motherland deeply and passionately, and because he sought in his own way to maintain the unity of the country, and if possible to intensify and strengthen that unity and solidarity. It was a very poignant observation that N.C. Chatterjee did on the floor of the House to a stunned and silent House. He cautioned the then government, he cautioned the fledgling democracy of India. He said, the greatest menace to democracy is the feeling that a political opponent of the government can be liquidated in prison when he is held in detention without trial. Friends, I just want to end with that history will continue to ask to a particular political leadership and dispensation. These are questions that were asked at that time when Dr. Mukherjee passed away from across the country. He was a national leader. And these are questions that history will continue to ask. And therefore, it is necessary for us that we listen to personalities such as Professor Tathagata Roy and to reinforce our understanding and to continue asking these fundamental questions about his death. As we sit today, it is a new Kashmir, it is a new India, it is a new leadership. It is a leadership and a new India and a Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir, which Syama Prasad Mookerjee had aspired and envisaged. Friends, I'd like to request and invite our very distinguished and our very inspiring Professor Tathagata Roy to deliver his special address on this very poignant occasion this morning. Thank you. Sir, sir, Excellency, you need to unmute. Excellency, you need to unmute.
Power interruption. Yes.
Yes.
I have unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you, sir.
Right. Thank you, Anirban. It was very kind of you to say all those things. I would only request you to drop the excellency. It's not necessary. Now, a few words before I get on to the subject. See, the book that you see behind Anirban's left shoulder is an earlier edition of Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee's biography that I had authored. It was published by
Prabhat Prakashan.
Prabhat Prakashan, sorry. It was published by Prabhat Prakashan, but subsequently it has been republished by Penguin. So I just wanted to let you know, and Prabhat Prakashan had also published a Hindi translation of this under the title of Apratim Nayak, Dr. and published by Prabhat Prakashan. And there is a Bengali translation which I did myself, the name of which is Bharat Keshori Jug Purush Syama Prasad. This is just by way of information to all the entire audience. The Bengali edition was published by the Kolkata publisher Mitra and Ghosh. Now let me get on to the subject. See, today is a day of great sorrow and great joy all at once for me. Great sorrow, obviously, because today my icon, Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee, who created the state to which I belong, that is West Bengal, the state in which we Bengali Hindus can exist with our heads held high and not as dhimmis, that we would have had he not succeeded in doing this. And his presently refer. It is at the same time a day of great joy that after all these years, after 1953, in 2019, it was made possible by our central government to repeal the temporary and transient provision, namely Article 370 from the Constitution, and restore the state of Jammu and Kashmir to its rightful status, that is, as a state, as an union territory of India. It is a matter of some anguish still that not the whole of the state of Jammu and Kashmir is in Indian possession. But I hope and pray that by and by, pretty soon, it will come to India's possession. Now, instead of beginning at the beginning, since today is the day of Balidan, let me begin with the Balidan.
I think connectivity, some connectivity issue, I think. Amit, some connectivity issue.
Yes, sir. Sir के end पे.
सर के एंड पे.
Yes, sir.
हाँ, एक बार उनके आप देखेंगे एक बार एडीसी को, या मैं
Yes, sir. मैं देख रहा हूँ.
उनके एंड पे है. हाँ, I think we'll just need to wait a little. I'm just trying to.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Very good. I'm sorry for these technical glitches. They happen all the time. Now, as I was saying, that I was beginning at the end, and what exactly happened to Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee on 23rd June 1953? He died, of course, but how did he die? I will begin on the 10th of May 1953. On the 10th of May 1953, Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee had got a call from the Jammu Praja Parishad, headed by Pandit Premnath Dogra, who was a good friend and political associate of Dr. Mukherjee, to visit the town of Jammu and address meetings over there. So Dr. Mukherjee decided to take this opportunity to travel through Punjab and address public meetings at different points of time. Accordingly, he began on the 10th of May in a journey that, unbeknownst to him, would prove to his very last journey. He started in a passenger train, in third class from New Delhi railway station, and addressed meetings at Nilokheri, Ambala, Sirhind, and a number of places. He traveled to Amritsar. At that time, I think the line between Jalandhar and Pathankot had not yet, via Mukherjee, had not yet been commissioned. That's my impression. So he traveled through Amritsar, Gurdaspur, and Pathankot. On the way between between Amritsar and Pathankot, an elderly gentleman boarded his compartment, paid his compliments, and very politely told him, "Sir, I am the Deputy Commissioner of Gurdaspur district, and I am expecting an order to arrest you because you are trying to enter the state of Jammu and Kashmir without a permit." What is this permit thing? This permit thing was introduced right at the beginning of the present state of Jammu and Kashmir because Pandit Nehru did not know whether Jammu and Kashmir belonged to us or didn't belong to us, whether it was a part of India or wasn't a part of India. This is a question that Dr. Mukherjee kept on hammering in the Lok Sabha and lambasting Pandit Nehru. So this gentleman said this very politely, and Dr. Mukherjee said, "All right, you do your duty, whatever is necessary." Then Dr. Mukherjee proceeded this gentleman was in the compartment, and they together proceeded in the train to Pathankot. After detraining at Pathankot, this gentleman got a message and came and told Dr. Mukherjee that, sir, there has been a change in plans. The government of India has instructed me not to obstruct you, but to facilitate your journey into Jammu and Kashmir. And for that, I am arranging a jeep. Imagine a person who had been so far telling that, sir, I'll be obliged to arrest you. He says, I'll arrange for a jeep so that you can enter Jammu and Kashmir. Mind you, at that time, the permit had to be issued by the government of India, not by the government of Kashmir, by the government of India. And in spite of Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee not having that permit, this person, this Deputy Commissioner of Gurdaspur, he was saying that you can proceed, I am making all arrangements. The driver objected, the driver of the jeep objected. He said, sir, मेरे पास तो वो नहीं है, permit नहीं है, मैं कैसे जम्मू जाऊं? So this man said, this deputy commissioner said, अरे तुम जाओ ना, तुम्हारे पीछे पीछे permit चला जाएगा. In this manner, Dr. Mukherjee proceeded. On the way, one of the last things that he was told on the soil of Punjab was one lady, who, very elderly lady, possibly from a refugee family, who said to him in Punjabi, I excuse my Punjabi, he said, "Oye puttar, jeet ke aven." So Dr. Mukherjee, of course, bowed to her and then proceeded. Now they proceeded to a place called Madhopur, which is the border between Punjab and Jammu and Kashmir, and there is a bridge across the river Ravi. The boundary between the two states is on the middle point of the bridge. Dr. Mukherjee saw from a distance that some people were standing on the bridge. They seemed to be policemen. Then Dr. Mukherjee proceeded, and in the mid-span, a person came and said, "Sir, you will have to get down because I cannot allow you to I cannot permit you to enter Jammu and Kashmir." So Dr. Mukherjee said that I am going to Jammu, I will go. Then as soon as he crossed the line, this person, his name was Captain Aziz. This Captain Aziz came and said, "Sir, I am arresting you. I have got an authorization from Prithvinandan Singh, who is the Inspector General of Police, the top honcho of Jammu and Kashmir Police. It says that you are about to disturb the law and order, you are about to create a law and order situation or words to that effect in Kashmir." Now, mind you, he was not being arrested. The Deputy Commissioner, upon instructions from the government of India, was facilitating his entry into the state of Jammu and Kashmir. But this person from the Jammu and Kashmir government came and said that I have got an order that you are about to disturb the law and order in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. What was the story behind these inconsistent moves? The story was only very simple. The story was that a conspiracy had been hatched to let him enter Jammu and Kashmir, to trap him into that state. Because the moment he was inside that state, he was outside the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. If he was arrested within the Supreme Court jurisdiction, a writ of habeas corpus could have been issued in a matter of days and he would have been set free. Such a thing happened before. But at that time, the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court did not extend to the state of Jammu and Kashmir, by courtesy, of course, of the late lamented Jawaharlal Nehru. And Dr. Mukherjee entered. He was put in a closed jeep. He was put in a closed jeep and driven. He was driven through Jammu city. He could hear that there were people thronged outside. They were waiting for him because Dr. Mukherjee's destination was Jammu. It was not Srinagar. So they were thronged over there and they were expecting know that in front of them a black closed jeep went by which contained which contained Dr. Mukherjee incarcerated and about to be further incarcerated. They spent the night at Batot, and the next day they again drove to Srinagar, and Dr. Mukherjee was incarcerated in a cottage which was far away from the city, about 15 kilometers away on the Dal Lake. It was a windswept cottage. Nobody had lived in it for a long time, infested by snakes and owls, and very badly kept. There were vegetable patches in the little compound that was surrounding the cottage, and the worst thing was that the cottage had no telephone and no radio. So Dr. Mukherjee was effectively cut off from the world. One of the first things that, the first difficulties that Dr. Mukherjee had is that he had a problem of great pain in one of his legs. Now, subsequently, when I was writing this biography of him, I consulted several doctors, among them a very prominent cardiologist in Calcutta, Dr. Shubho Dotto, and another doctor, Dr. R.N. Das. And they both opined that he possibly had, I mean, most people thought that he had varicose veins. Possibly he did have varicose veins. But they both opined that he possibly had unstable angina. And, but the doctors, even without knowing any of these things, had prescribed a lot of walking for him. And Dr. Mukherjee needed this walk very badly. But in this cottage, as it happened, there was no space to walk. And when he asked for walking space, they said that without Sheikh Abdullah's personal say-so, nothing can be arranged for you. So there Dr. Mukherjee was incarcerated. It was on top of a hillock. He had to walk up the hillock and with his bad leg and live there. There was one room in which he was there. There was not much space. There was another adjacent room in which his two companions, that is Guru Dutt Ved, an Ayurvedic practitioner, and Tek Chand, a young man, they were there. So it's an extremely depressing state of affairs. And it was intended to depress him. He wrote letters home. The closest confidant at his home was his bhabi. His bhabi, her name was Tara Devi, and his elder brother Syama Prasad Mookerjee's wife, and he used to write letters to her in Bengali. Now, very soon he came to know that these letters were still lying in Srinagar because there was no censor available who could read Bengali. So he had to write in English. He didn't get newspapers. He got newspapers possibly 7 days later. And of course, no radio. So he was cut off from the world. In this manner, it went on. Meanwhile, Premnath Dogra came to Pandit Premnath Dogra came to see him, and found him in a very depressed state. Barrister U.N. Trivedi, who was one of the Bharatiya Jansangh MPs at that time, he also came to see him. He also found him in a depressed state. Now, there is a story to it which I should refer to, which was told to me by both his daughter and part of it by his daughter, Shobita Banerjee, and partly by Balraj Madhok. When he had decided to leave Kolkata, when he had decided to leave for Jammu and Kashmir, and he was in Kolkata, Swami Sachidananda, who was the head of the Bharat Sevashram Sangh, and with whom Dr. Mukherjee was intimate, Swami Sachidananda told him not to go. Dr. Mukherjee said, why? Then Sachidananda said that we are sages, we have renounced the world, we have certain visions, which I cannot explain. And I'm telling you not to go. In spite of that, Dr. Mukherjee went. He halted at Patna. This was quite some time back before 10th of May when he left Delhi. He had halted at Patna. One Thakur Sahib, some person whom we used to call Thakur Sahib, I don't readily recall his other credentials. This Thakur Sahib told him that, look here, if you go to Kashmir and you are given any food by Sheikh Abdullah, you must make sure that somebody else tastes that food before you can eat it. Then he was told by Sucheta Kriplani. He was told by Sucheta Kriplani, who was a congresswoman herself, that don't go. Nehru will not let you come back from there. This was something which was totally unexpected. That Dr. Mukherjee said, what has Nehru got against me personally? We are political rivals, that is all right, but what has he got against me personally? She said, you don't know Nehru. I know Nehru. He will not let you come back alive. Dr. Mukherjee ignored all these things and he went on. So finally, let's come back to where he was. He was in an extremely depressed state, as I said, and his pain in the leg had intensified because he didn't get a chance to walk around. Then, as May rolled on to June 1953, sometime in early June 1953, he started feeling pains in the chest. So he was looked after by one Dr. Ali Muhammad. They had to come from the city. And upon getting a summon, they used to take hours together to come to from the city to the Dr. Mukherjee's cottage. Oh, one other thing. In between, I think it was 23rd and 24th of May, 1953, Pandit Nehru and his Home Minister K.N. Katju both are Kashmiris. They had visited Srinagar ostensibly for rest. I don't know whether they must have had a lot of consultation to do with Sheikh Abdullah, but ostensibly it was for rest. Now, was it not expected of them? Was it not incumbent on them to at least go and look up this detenue in that windswept cottage and find out how he was? Just ask him, how are you? Whether you have any problems or not. Nothing doing. I am sorry to use this term, but it was caddish of Pandit Nehru. Such a cad that he didn't go as far as this. And then later on, when he was asked, he said, I was told that he had been allotted a picturesque bungalow. What that infested, snake and owl infested cottage, windswept cottage, was described by someone as a picturesque bungalow, and that was enough for Nehru. He did not think it was necessary to go and look up the person who was arguably an important member of the opposition in the Lok Sabha at that time. It was a tiny opposition. Congress had a steamroller majority. That question will come later. And that time. So May ruled, as I said, May rolled on to June, and in the month of June, towards the end, I think around the 18th or 19th, intense pain in his chest. And after that, he complained. Then on the 21st of June, his pain was so much that he complained he had to be taken to Srinagar. Now a person, can you imagine, a person who is of Dr. Mukherjee's stature and importance, one would expect him to be taken in an ambulance, and he was complaining of heart problems. Now, at that time, I was told by doctors, but at that time, cardiology was not a properly developed science, and it was not even a specialization, it was a part of general medicine. But at the same time, people knew what a heart attack is, and this much everyone knew, that when somebody complains of something near a heart attack, then the least you can do is to totally immobilize him. Instead, what they did, they walked Dr. Mukherjee from that place down the hillock and then took him in a taxi, not even an ambulance, and put him up in the gynecological ward of a government hospital. Not a very special nursing home or any such thing, which would have been the right thing to do for the virtual leader of the opposition in Indian Lok Sabha. He was put in a room of a gynecological ward. And there was a very young doctor who was put in regular duty with him. His name was Dr. Zucchi. And Dr. Mukherjee asked for a Hindu nurse. So one Rajdulari Tikku was allotted. Now, in between, Dr. this barrister U.M. Trivedi, who was meanwhile in Srinagar, had seen a Jyotishi. And that Jyotishi said that you try to get an order as soon as you can, because I don't think he is going to last very long. Then U.M. Trivedi went to see Dr. Mukherjee and found that Dr. Mukherjee, after that heart attack, he was sitting up in his bed and signing some papers, looking at some papers. We all know today that a person who has suffered a heart attack is not supposed to sit up in bed like that. He is not even supposed to go to the bathroom. But this is what had happened. And the next is that the next day, U.M. Trivedi was told that Dr. Mukherjee was in a bad way very early in the morning, say about some 4 o'clock or so. He was told that Dr. Mukherjee was in a bad way. He came to the hospital and he was told at 3:40 a.m. in the morning, he had expired. Now here there is a story which was told to me by Shobita Banerjee, that Shobita Banerjee had visited Kashmir after Dr. Mukherjee's death. And before that, his son, that is Anutosh Mukherjee, he wanted to visit Kashmir to find out where he was and to get any possessions that he might have left behind. But Anutosh Mukherjee was not given a permit. By this time, the duty of giving the permit had switched from the government of India to the government of Kashmir. Anutosh Mukherjee was not given a permit because he had declared his father's name as Syama Prasad Mookerjee. Now, Shobita Banerjee was a married woman and she did not have to write her father's name. She wrote her husband's name. So she was given a permit and she went there. And there she came to know from this Rajdulari Tikku that Dr. Ali Muhammad had asked Rajdulari Tikku to push some injection into Dr. Mukherjee. And as soon as that injection was pushed, this Dr. Mukherjee started shouting, "Jal raha hai," and then he collapsed after a little while. Now these things are very murky. When I interviewed Shobita Banerjee, she was about 84, quite lucid otherwise, but she was trying to recall something that had happened so many years back. So it is possible that there could be some inaccuracy could have crept in. But what is the total picture that emerges from this whole thing? Number one is that this is unmistakable, this is undeniable, that he was trapped into entering Jammu and Kashmir so as to take him outside the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. Actually, Balraj Madhok by Meherchand Mahajan, who by that time had become a judge of the Supreme Court. Balraj Madhok and Meherchand Mahajan, they were both fellow Dogris. And Balraj Madhok actually was from POK, a place called Skardu, but he could speak Dogri. Meherchand Mahajan was Dogri. So he went, soon as he went to Meherchand Mahajan's house, he said, "Tum yahan kyun aaye ho? Tum jante nahi ho ki main ek Nyayamurti hu?" So Balraj Madhok started crying and saying, "Sir, ये लोग डॉक्टर मुखर्जी को पकड़ के ले गए, मैं क्या करूं सर, किसके पास जाऊं, आप तुम मेरा ये अकेला भरोसा है." So then Mayor Chand Mahajan relented a little bit and he said, see, I cannot help because he has been taken outside the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. Mayor Chand Mahajan later on became the Chief Justice of India. He has been taken outside the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. If he had been within the jurisdiction, we could have got him out in less than a week through a habeas corpus petition. But this is a conspiracy. You petition the Jammu and Kashmir High Court to take him out. And that is the process which is, this part is undeniable. That is the process through which he was trapped into Kashmir. His medical treatment was neglected. And of course, this is not, I can't prove it in a court of law, but it is clear, almost clear that this was a case of conspiracy hatched between Pandit Nehru and Sheikh Abdullah. Now, there is an end to it. After Syama Prasad Mookerjee died, his mother made an impassioned, tearful plea to Pandit Nehru to institute an inquiry into Dr. Mukherjee's death. Now imagine a person of Dr. Mukherjee's stature, a virtual leader of the opposition in the Lok Sabha. He has died in captivity, away from his family, away from his party members, away from anyone he loved or he considered close, with only the company of Tek Chand and Ved, Gurudat Ved. And there were suspicious circumstances under which he had died. Under these circumstances, should an inquiry not been instituted? It was the very minimum that was necessary. Imagine, for the disappearance of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, there have been 5 inquiries. 3 in India, 1 in Japan, 1 by the British. Gandhiji, Indira Gandhi and Rajiv Gandhi, they were all assassinated in public view. In spite of that, there were several inquiries into their deaths. And Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee died in captivity, away from everyone that he knew, and there was no inquiry. Why? Asking on the floor of the Lok Sabha, let's have an inquiry, let's have an inquiry. H.V. Kamath said so. Pandit H.N. Kunjuru said so. So many people, Somnath Chatterjee said so. So many people said so. Nehru stonewalled an inquiry. Nehru did not speak. It was Katju who was speaking. Katju kept on saying, no, what is the need for inquiry? It is very clear that there is nothing to hide. Why should there be an inquiry? Not only that, Nehru wrote a letter. The superciliousness of that letter is really brings your blood to boil. He wrote that letter to Dr. Mukherjee's mother, saying that I have been assured by some person who happened to know, no names. I have been assured by some persons who have had known, who should have known to the circumstances, and I've been told that there was no kind of let up, no hindrance to a proper medical treatment, and all possible help was rendered to him. And then the usual words of consolation and all that. Now, this person, Dr. Mukherjee's mother, he said that I am not asking you for pity. I am asking you for an inquiry into the death of a person who died under suspicious circumstances, away from his family. I am not asking for your consolation. But Nehru would not budge. Now this brings us to the principal point. Why did Nehru stonewall this inquiry? Why did Nehru not permit this inquiry? There's another thing. Stated by a journalist, right at the moment I can't recall his name, that when Dr. Mukherjee had died, Nehru was returning from the coronation of Queen Elizabeth, or the Queen of United Kingdom. And he had been briefly halting at Cairo. Then at the same place at Cairo, some journalist or some person of his entourage, he went and told him, said, Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee is dead. Nehru could not hide his glee. He jumped up picked up his swagger stick and went to another room, probably to thank God or whatever. But this had happened. Under these circumstances, I am putting this question to you, my dear audience. Inquiry, but no inquiry. And finally, Joachim Alba closed this whole thing by saying that, sir, addressing the Speaker of the Lok Sabha, he was a Lok Sabha member, I think, from somewhere in the Konkan coast. He's Margaret Alba's father. Joachim Alba said, sir, let there not be an inquiry. Inquiry is not necessary. Do you expect that the son of Motilal Nehru could have done such a thing as to merit an inquiry? And that put a lid on it, because nobody could do anything because Nehru had a steamroller majority in the parliament. Apart from this, a large number of doctors, of course, including Dr. B.C. Roy, then the doctor from Patna, doctors as a full medical board in Jaipur, from Delhi, they had all petitioned the government of India that his treatment had not proceeded in the proper manner, and there ought to be an inquiry. Nothing was done. Story. Now, let me go to the earlier parts of Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee's life and try to put them across to you in a nutshell, as briefly as possible. So Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee was the second son of Sir Ashutosh Mukherjee, a great educator. He was born in Calcutta. He remained an educator until the age of 39. Now, a lot of people spread a canard that he was at one point of time the member of the Congress.
I think there has been another power failure. So I think until Governor Sir joins, I can all those who have gathered here, I can just supplement on what he has said. For example, when he spoke about, we'll wait till he joins, when he spoke about Dr. Mukherjee's mother demanding an inquiry. In fact, Dr. Mukherjee's mother writes to Jawaharlal Nehru on 4th July 1953. She says, his death is shrouded in mystery. Is it not most astounding and shocking that ever since his detention there, the first information that I, his mother, received from the government of Kashmir was that my son was no more. And then she goes on to say that the information was conveyed in such a rude and crude manner that we were just told the message was conveyed. Even the telegram from my son that he had been removed to the hospital reached us here after the tragic news of his death. His letters were being censored. His telegrams were not being sent. His letters were being withheld also. There is definite information that my son had not been keeping well practically from the beginning of his detention. He had been positively ill a number of times and for successive periods. Why did not I ask the government of Kashmir and your government send any information whatsoever to me and my family? And when she asked for an inquiry, and as Professor Tathagata Roy mentioned, what did Nehru say? Nehru said, I have since inquired, 5th July 1953, his response to Jogomaya Devi. I have since inquired further into it from a number of persons who had occasion to know some facts. I can only say to you that I arrived at the clear and honest conclusion that he, Jawaharlal Nehru, having talked to a few people, has come to the clear and honest conclusion that there is no mystery in this and that Dr. Mukherjee was given every consideration. To which, and then he says, then you see his attitude, that brazen attitude, since Honorable Governor has already said a lot, but he has a position which I must recognize now, and I cannot say many things directly in his presence, but he has been very open about it. And then Nehru writes, I have spent about 10 years in prison. You see the brazen manner. He's saying, I have been kept in innumerable jails of all kinds all over India. And so I know something about how a prisoner feels and what conditions of his imprisonment usually are. The final reply Dr. Mukherjee's mother gives to Jawaharlal Nehru, 9th July 1953, she says that I had clearly told you that I had positive evidence to prove certain very relevant and important facts. You do not care to know or look into them. You say that you had inquired from a number of persons who had occasion to know some facts. It is strange that even we, the members of his family, are not regarded as persons who can throw at least some light on the matter. Oh, His Excellency has joined. I was just supplementing what you said. I was actually reading out from Jogomaya Devi's letter to Nehru. Sir, please continue, sir. Please continue. Sir.
Absolutely. Actually, I'm very sorry for these little glitches.
Not at all,
Even
sir.
in the Raj Bhavan, the power supply is not quite all that reliable. Anyway, coming back, I was trying to give a very brief overview of Dr. Mukherjee's life and achievement. As I said, he had been brought up as an educator by his father, who was a great educator. And Dr. Mukherjee, until 1939, had remained in the field of education. Sometimes a canard is spread that at some point of time he had joined the Congress, but it was nothing of the sort. In 1929, he had been elected to the Bengal Legislative Council on a Congress ticket from the university constituency. His intention was to put forth the affairs of the university before the council, and that was a different regime altogether. It was a regime of what is called the diarchy under the Montagu-Chelmsford reforms. And then the Congress decided that unless we get an assurance of Swaraj from the British government, we are not going to participate in this council. Now, Dr. Mukherjee had a principle that he followed right through his life. He did not believe in boycott. He believed that whatever chance is given of a constitutional manner in which protest can be registered, that chance should be availed of and the best made out of it. That is the most important thing, one very important feature of his life, that he was a constitutional politician right through his life. He was not an Inqilab Jindabad type. He was not a bus and drum burning type, a plethora of which we have seen in Bengal. He was a constitutional politician in his heart, and he remained so. But 1937, because of certain, shall I say, the Congress, the Congress allowed a Muslim League and Krishak Praja Party coalition to come to power in Bengal. It was not necessary. Congress, Krishak Praja Party was although most of its members were Muslim, it was led by A.K. Fazlul Haq. And Fazlul Haq was very, very eager to form a coalition with the Congress. But the Congress did not form a coalition with him. Instead, they pushed him into the lap of the Muslim League, with the result that Bengal at that time got a thoroughly communal and draconian regime under the chief ministership or premiership of Fazlul Haq. Fazlul Haq himself was not a communal person, but Fazlul Haq was a very, how should I put it, weak-kneed person and very easily persuaded to go change positions from one extreme to another. So as a result of that, the state of Hindus was reduced to such a horrible condition after 1937 that certain very prominent members of the Hindu society in Bengal, they were looking for a leader and they found no one other than Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee. Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee was not in politics at that time, but they persuaded him to enter politics because he said that unless you enter politics now and you give leadership to the Hindus, the fate of percent minority Hindus in the province of Bengal is horrible, is going to get worse and worse and worse. Dr. Mukherjee then did something immediately after entering politics and joining Hindu Mahasabha. The next year he was elected, he was nominated as the working president of All India Hindu Mahasabha. Not only that, after that, he worked his politics in such a way that he brought Fazlul Haq out from the clutches of the Muslim League and formed a coalition with him, which was called colloquially as the Syama Haq Cabinet. The formal name was Progressive Democratic Coalition. It was called the Syama Haq Cabinet, and it didn't last for more than a year, a little more than a year. But during that time, the Hindus and the Muslims in Bengal, they got justice, irreligious justice, secular justice, justice which was not tainted by religion. But this was too good to last. Actually, Bengal at that time was a horrible governor called Sir John Herbert. And this Sir John Herbert wanted the Muslim League to come back to power, so he somehow jockeyed things in such a way that this is that eventually to make a long story short, this cabinet was deposed. Now here, there's one point I must mention, that Dr. Mukherjee's detractors, you see, the greatest of politicians in the country, in any country, have detractors. Dr. Mukherjee's detractors have tried to paint a picture that he was against Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. It is true that Dr. Mukherjee and Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose did not share the same political thought. So for instance, Netaji thought that my enemy's enemy is my friend, so therefore I should align with the Germans and the Japanese. Dr. Mukherjee thought that we do not want a change in masters. We do not want British colonies to be replaced by Japanese colonies. The Japanese were not better colonies than the British. If you ask any Filipino or read about the history of Philippines or China, what the Japanese did over there, it's not something to praise to the skies. But Dr. Mukherjee said that we do not want a change in masters, and they steered different courses. But the point is that their period of interaction was very, very small. Dr. Mukherjee came to politics in 1939, end of 1939, I think December 1939. And Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose had left the shores of India in January 1941. So there was just the year of 1940, during which they had some tussle regarding the election to the Calcutta Corporation. I personally think that Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose was too great a leader to involve himself in the election of the Calcutta Corporation, but that is a matter of argument. The main point is this is the only point of time where Dr. Mukherjee and Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose differed. And then thereafter, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose was lost to India. He went to Germany, then he went to Japan, organized the Azad Hind Fauj. That is all common knowledge, so I'm not going into that. Then Dr. Mukherjee, after the after the Syama cabinet was deposed, was displaced from power by the machinations of the um, governor, Sir John Herbert, Dr. Mukherjee remained there as a member of the West Bengal legislature, and he kept on watching the work of the Muslim League government. He kept on lambasting the government, but he had no power actually. Then in 1942, there was a terrible cyclone and tsunami in a place called Kathi in West Bengal, where some 30,000 people had died in a period of 15 minutes. And then in 1943, there was a Great Bengal famine. Great Bengal famine, it is learnt that a number between 30 lakhs and 50 lakhs of people died from starvation. From starvation. And the reason for this death, reason for this famine was basically just one, that this Herbert was so scared of a Japanese takeover of Bengal that he destroyed all rice, which was, I mean, leaving aside a little bit, he destroyed most of the rice, surplus to the requirement of the armed forces. As a result, the price of rice rose from 2 rupees per mond. A mond is about 36 kilograms. 2 rupees per mond to 100 rupees per mond. As a result, people ate the leaves of trees and snails. They died, and ultimately even that was not available, and people died like flies. It is estimated that 50 lakhs of people would have died. During this period, Dr. Mukherjee did unbelievable relief work. What he did is, large number of relief organizations had sprung up, but there was no coordination among them. Dr. Mukherjee provided that coordination. Then in 1944, there was a very unfortunate incident involving Gandhiji. What had happened is that as soon as the 1942 Quit India movement was launched, the British government put all Congress leaders in the jail. So they had no influence on the country. The only people who did not join were, number one is Hindu Mahasabha, in which Dr. Mukherjee was leader. And the reason why he did not join this thing is, I have already told you that he was a constitutional politician. Another person who did not join, very important, was Ambedkarji. Dr. Ambedkar did not join because he did not believe in this Congress's 1942 movement. And the Muslim League, of course, did not join. So after some time, Gandhiji fell very ill, and the British government did not want something to happen to Gandhiji while he was incarcerated in a British jail. So they let him out. Now, Chakravarti Rajagopalachari, CR, he had remained outside jail because he had also, in spite of being in the Congress, he had also opposed the 42 movement. So as a result, he remained outside. And CR persuaded Gandhi to go to Jinnah and open talks with him. Now, it was an extremely ill-conceived move, and this particular move has been hidden from the history books by the politicians, by the so-called historians, about whom Arun Shourie ji has written in Eminent Historians in a very revealing book that this 1944 Gandhi Jinnah talks. After this Gandhi Jinnah talks, Jinnah had made certain comments. One thing he said that Gandhiji said that he had expressed staggering contempt for C. Rajagopalachari. Second thing he said that I don't agree to anything that Gandhi has proposed, but Gandhi has defined Pakistan for me. Gandhi has defined Pakistan for me. This is what had happened. What he said. Actually, the Pakistan resolution of 1940 moved in a Lahore meeting of the Muslim League, did not make it clear what Pakistan was going to be. Now, in this 1944 Gandhi Jinnah talks, based on a draft prepared by Chakravarti Rajagopalachari, some proposal was given to Jinnah, and Jinnah was absolutely, he was in seventh heaven. He said that you have defined this Pakistan for me. You have considered. Now you cannot deny Pakistan. Actually, this was a milestone in the history of the country, in the formation of Pakistan, and this is something that has been very carefully airbrushed by these so-called historians. Anyway, next thing that happened was in 1946, the great Calcutta killings and the Noakhali pogrom. In great Calcutta killings, which had happened on the 16th of August, Jinnah demanded Pakistan, and he said that ladke lenge Pakistan, lekar rahenge Pakistan. What does it mean? I will achieve Pakistan by force, and I shall not rest until Pakistan is achieved. And so what he had said, I'm quoting him almost verbatim, I hope it is correct. He had said, today we have forged a pistol and we are in a position to use it. Today we bid goodbye to all constitutional methods. And on 16th August, he had chosen Calcutta to be the place where he would launch this direct action program. He called it direct action. And there was wholesale murder of Hindus initially. He had immobilized the police, he had immobilized the military, as a result of which there was total bedlam, total mass murder, pogrom. But that was on the 16th of August, 1946. But Calcutta was a Muslim, Sikh, Hindu majority city. And there were also a lot of Sikhs there, Sarrajis, who were not at all pleased with these moves of the Muslim League. So from the third day onwards, Bengali Hindus, Biharis and Sardarjis, they gave the Muslim League a taste of their own medicine, as a result of which Sarawardi, who was the Prime Minister or Premier of Bengal at that time, he withdrew this thing and he deployed the army and military to quell this thing. Thereafter, Noakhali happened. Where is Noakhali? Noakhali is a district in the deep inside Bangladesh, which was at that time roughly 80% Muslim and 20% Hindu. Now it is divided into three districts called Noakhali, Lakhipur and Feni. And the three districts combined together, they have about 98% Muslims and just 2% Hindus. In Noakhali, there was total pogrom. There were no riots. There was total pogrom. Killing, torching, raping, forcible conversion, everything. As a result, Gandhiji had to interfere. And Gandhiji traveled to Noakhali, which has made Noakhali famous right through the year. But sorry to say that he had achieved zilch. He had achieved zilch because Gandhiji wanted the Hindus to go back to their half-burnt houses. No Hindu went back. No Hindu went back. Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee in Noakhali did something fantastic, which has also not received the publicity that is due to it. You see, at that time, the belief in Hindu society was that any Hindu who's been force-fed beef is lost his Hindudom and he becomes a Muslim. So he had no other alternative to becoming a Muslim. So a whole lot of Hindus in the district of Noakhali, they had been force-fed beef, mostly by killing, slaughtering their own cows. And these people thought that Hindu society will not take us back. Now here, Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee, with the assistance of Swami Madhvananda of Ramakrishna Mathan Mission, held meetings right through the length and breadth of Bengal and said that nothing doing. People who were Hindus will remain Hindus, they are Hindus. And there will be no prayashchit. Simply because they have been force-fed beef doesn't mean that they cease to be Hindus, they remain Hindus. And that is why so many people of Noakhali came back to the Hindu fold. Only Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee could swing such a thing, and he made it possible. Then the next thing, which I personally consider Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee's greatest achievement, that is the creation of the state of West Bengal. my state, the state to which I belong, where I, as a Bengali Hindu, can exist as a citizen of India with my head held high. Now, what was the situation? In 1947, when partition was being discussed and Congress had practically conceded Pakistan, by March 1947, Congress had conceded Pakistan because Nehru was so eager to become prime minister. So long he has been to jail and he has worked and he has been living under privation. He was so eager to become prime minister that he was prepared to sign on a blank paper, anything. So there was this thing. Bengal at that time was the undivided province of Bengal, had a 53% Muslim population and 47% Hindu population, roughly. And Bengal, Jinnah argued that this is a Muslim majority province, obviously this will go to Pakistan. Then Dr. Mukherjee argued that nothing doing. There are very substantial parts of Bengal which are Hindu majority and which must remain as part of India. As part of India. And he once again traversed the length and breadth of the whole of the province of Bengal and convinced people, including the Congress, who had the bulk of the Hindu votes, including the Congress, that Bengal should be partitioned so that Bengali Hindus have a homeland and they don't have to live as dhimmis in Pakistan. Congress, after some hemming and hawing and and some hesitation, ultimately wholeheartedly supported him. Dr. Mukherjee, Congress wholeheartedly supported him. And as a result of that, Bengal could be part of the partition of India. If the partition of India had not happened, there would not have arisen any question of partition of Bengal. But partition of India having happened, partition of Bengal was a necessity for the Bengali Hindus. And we thank our stars that Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee could swing it, which is a result of which I am a proud Indian citizen today. I am a proud Bengali Hindu today. This was his greatest achievement in Bengal, greatest achievement of his life. Kashmir came later, but Kashmir, his success was achieved only by the political party that he founded, actually successor to the political party he founded, and so many years after his death. But Bengal happened, the partition of Bengal happened while he was there during his lifetime, and this is the greatest achievement, Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee. Thereafter, when the country became independent, Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee was nominated by none less than Mahatma Gandhi to join the Union Cabinet. Dr. Mukherjee, after some slight hesitation, eventually joined the Union Cabinet. He was made the Minister of Supply and Minister of Industries and Supply. And among Dr. Mukherjee's achievements during the period that is from 1947 August till 1950 April, during this period, he had done some fantastic things. It is not as if these things had not been thought of earlier, but he lent his ministerial power behind it and he pushed it through. What were they? Number one is the Sindri fertilizer factory in Bihar, which was the first fertilizer factory and into the public sector, making, in a process industry, making ammonium sulfate. Second thing, Chittaranjan Locomotive Works in West Bengal. In Chittaranjan Locomotive Works, for the first time, Indian Railways started manufacturing steam engines. The third was the DVC, Damodar Valley Corporation, which had been conceived of earlier by the British, but it was, as I said, it was given the ministerial push, as a result of which it was possible to launch. So these were some of the achievements of Dr. Mukherjee, but in 1950, something else happened, as a result of which something more happened. With a very brief description of that, I will conclude my talk, because Anirban, are you fidgeting? Don't fidget.
No,
I'm almost come to the top.
Not at all, sir. In fact,
Right.
once you conclude, I'll say why what you have said is really
Yes.
Absolutely not. Yes. Please.
Right. I'm coming to that. You see, in 1950, the government of East Pakistan, under the leadership of their Chief Secretary Aziz Ahmed, started a pogrom, anti-Hindu pogrom. Not a riot, mind you, a pogrom, a systematic war of annihilation against a beleaguered minority, the Hindus, who we call Bengal. In West Bengal, we make broad distinctions about Bengal and Ghoti. Who are the Ghotis? Ghotis are the original inhabitants of West Bengal. And Bengal are the people who had the East Bengali Hindus who were forced to migrate to West Bengal. Now, I am a proud Bengal. I'm from a village of, from the district of Brahmanbadia. Now Brahmanbadia, formerly it used to be Kumilla. So that is it. Now, when this pogrom started, this pogrom was terrible. 50,000 people were killed through the length and breadth of East Bengal, that is East Bengal or East Pakistan. The worst affected areas were Noakhali, Dhaka city, and Pabna and a few other places. As a result of that, people fled in hordes, and the entire intellectual class of East Bengal, which was dominated by Hindus, had to flee to India. That is why in West Bengal, if you ask someone, Badi chilo kothay? Badi chilo means what? It doesn't mean that where do you hail from? Which is your native village? Which was your native village? You don't have a native village anymore. People from other parts of India say, where are you from? Say, I am from Motihari. Where are you from? I am from Bijnor. Where are you from? I am from Pune. Where are you from? I am from Trichinopoli I am from Kottayam. Where am I from? I had a native village. I had a native village. I don't have that native village. Why? Because as a Hindu, I had no right to live in Pakistan and I was driven out. My own nuclear family was slightly fortunate, but that is a different matter altogether. The bulk of Hindus in East Pakistan had to leave the East Pakistan, many of them in terrible conditions, quite a number of our relatives, and many of them after losing their women folk. The women folk were kidnapped. And among them, there are relatives of mine. So this thing happened. Then when this happened, Syama Prasad was at that time a member of the cabinet. So he couldn't come out in the open and said that this is happening and Nehru ought to do something about it. But he was trying to persuade Nehru inside the cabinet to do something about it. Now, mind you, this thing had started in 1950, February. And Sardar Patel was still alive. Syama Prasad worked on Sardar Patel. Sardar Patel was at that time keeping extremely bad health. Plus, he had a whole lot of other preoccupations. In the light of what is happening in Ladakh, we can say, you know, the Christians have a belief in a thing called original sin. In the original sin in India, Sino-Indian relations, India-Chinese relations, was India's, or rather Nehru's, acquiescence in the Chinese annexation of Tibet. Now, this was, Sardar Patel was extremely exercised over it, and he died in December 1950. So there was nobody to challenge Nehru. And Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee tried very hard to persuade Nehru to do something to invade East Pakistan, to extract some land from them so that the Hindu refugees could be accommodated, or to have an exchange of population as was done between Indian Punjab and Pakistani Punjab. Nehru would not relent. Nehru would not listen to it. He said it is a matter of belief. He said it is a whole lot of highfalutin things. But what is to be done with these hapless people who had to leave their home and hearth with only the clothes on their backs? Nehru is silent. Then Nehru did something. Just imagine, this was a government engineered pogrom everyone knew. Nehru, with his intelligence network, could not but have known about it. Of course he knew. But what did he do? He went and inked a pact with Liaquat Ali Khan. Liaquat Ali Khan at that time was the Prime Minister of Pakistan. He went and inked a pact with Liaquat Ali Khan saying that each of these two countries in to their minorities. And after having said that, he said, I've solved the problem. Now all these East Bengali Hindus will go back to East Bengal and they will get whatever property they had lost over there. Now it was, I mean, excuse my using strong words, but it's a politically stupid thing to say, because it could not have been unknown to Nehru that this thing was engineered by the Pakistan government itself, notably by Aziz Ahmed. Aziz Ahmed has been described as notoriously anti-Hindu by a person known as the B.K. Nehru. B.K. Nehru and Aziz Ahmed had interacted when B.K. Nehru was in America, and B.K. Nehru, in his autobiography, Nice Guys Finished Second, has referred to Aziz Ahmed. Aziz Ahmed did it. So, are you going to ink a pact with a person who's the very perpetrator of it? But that was Nehru. So he did it, and Dr. Mukherjee couldn't stand it anymore. He resigned from the cabinet, and by the middle of April, he was relieved of the cabinet, and he made a memorable speech in the Lok Sabha stating the reasons why he had resigned. My book, which is there on the shelf behind Anirban, it gives the whole speech in complete words, complete speech. And it is very, very revealing. Now, after that, Dr. Mukherjee was a person without a party, but his leadership was there. His leadership was valuable. So what was to be done? He was approached by another great man, Param Pujaniya Guruji Gulwalkar, whose photograph is behind Anirban's right shoulder. Param Pujaniya Guruji approached Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee and said that you must found a new party. Then Dr. Mukherjee said that, but I'm 50 years old. He was trying to speak Hindi, and Guruji said that you don't have to speak Hindi. Syama Prasad used to speak very foul Hindi, although he was, but he used to speak very foul Hindi. He said that you don't have to speak Hindi. And then he spoke in English. He said that you found a new party. I will give you my best Swayamsevaks to help you. And he gave people like Atal Bihari Vajpayee, then Jagdish Mathur, then whole lot of people. I mean,
Dindayal Upadhyay.
Sorry?
Dindayal Upadhyay.
Dindayal Upadhyay, of course. Yeah, I should have taken his name before anyone else. Then many such people. And with them, Dr. Mukherjee slogged for nearly a year and a half. And after toying with many things, many ideas, including a name of the party, though originally the party was supposed to be called the Indian People's Party. Indian People's Party. Then said, no, I don't want Dr. Mukherjee himself said, I don't want an English name. I want an Indian name, Hindi name. Then Balraj Madhok was his right hand at that time. Balraj Madhok said that, let us call it Bharatiya Lok Sangh. Then he said, no, Lok sounds like Bhid, you know. So it was finally called Bharatiya Jan Sangh. And then after that, what happened is history. Bharatiya Jan Sangh merged into the Janata Party upon the efforts of Jayaprakash Narayan. Then it came out of the Janata Party in 1980 and metamorphosed itself into the Bharatiya Janata Party. And the rest is, of course, history. We all know it's a person from the successor party which the Dr. Mukherjee founded. We have our present Prime Minister who enjoys an absolute majority on the floor of the Lok Sabha. So this, dear audience, is in a nutshell what I intended to tell. I must have taken a long time. Now somebody has said over here, Pandit Deendayal Upadhyaya was also murdered. Yes, he was murdered. There were uncanny similarities between Pandit Deendayal Upadhyaya and Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee. Incidentally, Deendayal Upadhyaya was such a favorite of Dr. Mukherjee that he had said that if I had 5 Deendayals, 5 people like Deendayal, I could have changed the face of this country. Deendayal Upadhyaya, Dr. Mukherjee, there are, as I said, there are uncanny similarities. They both died at the age of 52. They both died when they were almost at the top of their careers. And their combined contribution has gone to build the party which is today known as Bharatiya Janata Party. So thank you very much. I forgot the name of the gentleman who had appointed this thing to me. And I am extremely grateful to the audience for having, and to Anirban, of course, and all the people with him for having given me this great opportunity of speaking on my icon on this day, his Balidan Divas. Thank you. Namaskar. Bharat Mata ki jai.
Thank you so much, sir. And I think I really want to tell you, and I want to reflect the feeling of this, of all those who have joined us today. The comments of inspiration that they have received, the assertions that there needs to be an inquiry, the many takeaways that many people have from this talk that you have delivered today, and the intense emotions and feelings also that it has generated. It is very interesting that you started with his death, his detention and his death, and then we took an entire tour d'horizon of his life and came back to where you left. And that is why I think this was a comprehensive, indeed a special address, an inspiring address, which took us through not only Dr. Mukherjee's martyrdom, but his humongous contribution to modern India in such a short span of time. And I think, therefore, this special address must be heard by all, and we are delighted that we have, as we have always done, we have recorded this talk. Besides doing it live, we shall put it on YouTube. And the many questions that people have, the many false propaganda that, and your Twitter also has answered a number of them, are still consistently being peddled against Dr. Mukherjee, is answered in this talk. But it is also a tremendous feeling to see that as you are speaking, as of now, hashtag Syama Prasad Mookerjee, hashtag Balidan Divas is trending across the country. And 67 years after his death, after his martyrdom, the country, people, and a large number of his opponents also are compelled to discuss him, are compelled to discuss his contribution, are compelled to debate what his life and his contribution has meant for this country. And as I was saying, when you mentioned Dr. Mukherjee's mother, her letter, her poignant letters to Jawaharlal Nehru, and I was quoting the last letter of 9 July 1953, where she says that you did not, it is strange that even we, the members of his family, are not regarded as persons who can throw at least some light on the matter. And yet you call your conclusion to be honest. And then she says, your experience in jails is known to all. It was at one time a matter of great national pride with us. That you, Jawaharlal Nehru, went to British jails was a matter of pride for us. But you had suffered imprisonment against an alien rule, and my son has met his death in detention without trial under a national government. I think that is what makes it so disturbing, at the same time so moving and poignant. And in the end, she wrote in her first, when she in the letter she wrote, death is inevitable, but a death in detention and a detention without trial is neither normal nor inevitable. Yet, such was the death of my son, imprisoned by persons whose political activities he had the courage to oppose, surrounded by armed guards till his last moments in hospital, far away from his near and dear ones, without even one familiar face within his last sight, my gallant son met his tragic end. With what words on his lips, in whose presence and under whose care and treatment did he depart, even I, his mother, it seems, shall never know. Friends, I think in the ultimate analysis, if we look back at today, the integration of Jammu and Kashmir was Dr. Mukherjee's final battle. And ultimately, though it took 67 years, in that ultimate battle, he was again triumphant. On August 2019, when there was complete integration with Jammu and Kashmir with the rest of India. So in the ultimate analysis, Dr. Mukherjee came out triumphant in this last struggle of his. I think it has been an extremely inspiring morning, very poignant morning. And I would appeal to all of you, having listened to His Excellency Governor of Meghalaya, Professor Tathagata Roy, I would appeal to all of you that we need to continue disseminating this episode as well of his life in detail. We need to continue asking questions. Why did his diary disappear? What was that injection that was given to him? Why was there no ambulance? Why was he taken in a car? Why was, after he suffered his first attack on 22nd June in the morning, a 7 hours delay before he was transported to hospital? Why was there no medical bulletin? Why was there no board of doctors? Timing of his death as given out by the government of Kashmir. As per the nurse, it was 2:30. As per the government of Kashmir, it was 3:40. Why was his body not allowed to land in Delhi, which was one of his most active ground of the body? Why was announcement of his death delayed by at least 5 hours? All these questions, and ultimately, despite all the luminaries of that era asking for an inquiry, why was there no inquiry instituted in such a monstrous and criminal lapse as his death? And as Professor Roy has written in his book, please read it again. You cannot read it once only. As he has written in his book, how come that he was allowed to proceed to Jammu and Kashmir? Detained because he did not take a permit, which was then under the government of India rule. And why was he arrested? Because he didn't have a permit by the Jammu and Kashmir police, whereas that rule did not exist. And the ordinance was passed a day after he was arrested. And as many papers, unpublished papers come, there was this entire file of correspondence between Sheikh Abdullah and Jawaharlal Nehru on Dr. Mukherjee. Where is that file? We know, we hear, we read that there was a file. What was that white powder that was given to him when he was not well? Why was that decrepit cottage? It was a private cottage, decrepit, as Professor Roy has described in his book, and as he has said today, with those forbidding mountains behind and cold draft of continuously blowing from there. And again, I want to end on a personal note. As I stood there on that hillock in the end of Nishat Bagh, in that desolate place last December when I was in Srinagar, as desolate as it was in 1953, completely cut off even today. From there, I called up Professor Roy, and we had a conversation. He's sitting in Meghalaya and me standing in Srinagar, in that same spot where once that cottage stood. It is as desolate, as lonely, as forbidding as it was 67 years ago. But friends, we must end on a note of conviction that today there is a new chapter that is being written in Jammu and Kashmir. The naras of Azadi have fallen silent. Every day terrorists and separatists are suffering casualties. And those who had wanted an Azad Kashmir see that their pipe dream has forever crashed. Kashmir is and continues to remain integral and eternal. Look at him. I remember K. Hanumantayyas in 1964 when Lok Sabha debated. I would urge all of you, Lok Sabha debated for 3 months in 1964 the abrogation of Article 370. And out of 20 members of parliament cutting across party line who participated in the debate, 17 supported the abrogation of Article 370. Out of those 17, 9 were Congress members. And I would urge all of you to read the later Chief Minister of Karnataka, the founder, in a sense, the creator of modern Karnataka. What an inspiring speech. And he says, why Article 370 must go. A member of the Constituent Assembly also. Cutting across party line, Harivishnu Kamath. S.M. Banerjee of Kanpur, a CPI supported 7-time member of parliament, whose centenary it was last year in August, batting for abrogation of Article 370. So friends, let us not think that it was Syama Prasad Mookerjee's demand died out with him. It was the Janasangh, it was Pandit Deendayal Upadhyay. In fact, from Pandit Deendayal Upadhyay for many years, the Janasangh from June 23rd till July 6th celebrated a Syama Prasad Mookerjee fortnightly, continuously. It was the Janasangh, it was the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, and it was thousands of Karyakartas of both the Sangh and the Bharatiya Janasangh who kept up the spirit of integration and the demand for abrogation of 370 alive. I would like to thank Honorable Governor of Meghalaya for inspiring us on this morning. And I would really like to thank him from the bottom of my heart, and that we feel very privileged to listen to you today and for having given us such deep insights. It only adds to our conviction that we need to work for Ek Bharat, Shresth Bharat. I wish you, sir, all the best, and we look forward to again listening to you, to engaging with you, and many questions you have answered, which I think all those who have participated and listened can take forward. And let us keep reading this bit, let us keep disseminating, let's keep discussing amongst us. I would like to thank all of you who have joined, all from across the country, from people have joined us. I would like to thank all the seniors who, in spite of such a busy schedule, have responded to this invitation and joined us. And all our Karyakartas, research scholars, young friends who have all joined us here today. It is your presence here is a tribute. Thank you so much. Thank you, Your Excellency. We can end the proceedings. Thank you so much. Thank you.